So this is weird. It's not raining or snowing for once when I'm making one of these things. So, but what I'm going to get into is some things I was talking to a group of tactical guys about this morning, and specifically about team dynamics and how we should approach certain aspects of training. So you have a handful of these guys who failed various aspects of their course that they're having to rework and try again and work back through it. And it's always interesting to see, because the training is very difficult that they're going through, and it's interesting to see how they respond to the stress. And it's not just the physical stress, but also the emotional stress, the mental stress. How do they respond to it? And a lot of it comes down to framing. How do we choose to look at this? How should we approach this? Does this failure define me as a person? Is this failure a singular event that I can learn a hell of a lot from? Or how do I look at it? So first thing we start with is framing and teaching them about positive ways they can look at this. They can look at it and say, well, I have more time to get better, more time to develop, more time to work on this or that and really improve and kind of wow some people, if you will. And it's important to remember that when you have failure, that is a singular event. All right, like you might have failed at it right then, right there. That's okay. You got to learn from it. What could you have improved upon? All that stuff. That hindsight is 20/20, and then take that information and let that dictate what you do moving forward. But there's a lot of people that they just get hung up and caught up in this. Well, I failed XYZ, therefore I am a failure. And my identity is so wrapped up in this thing that I am a failure if I do not achieve X. And that's going to fuck you up, because what will happen is people get really angry, really bitter. They're hard on themselves unnecessarily. There's a ton of very negative behavior that takes place. And man, that bitterness can kill you. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about a guy who had ran for political office in a foreign country and lost by a vote. And he was basically, from that moment he lost, he was very angry and bitter, and his health began to decline dramatically. He started having ulcers, he couldn't sleep, and just all these very negative things. And it all stemmed from his inability to let go and move on. And that's something I encourage people to take a look at, and playing off of that, make sure you have the right people around you. And that is a challenge, to find good people that are positive, that truly want your best interest. So there's two analogies I really like for this. Number one is by John Gordon, where he talks about, in his book, The Energy Bus. You're the one driving your bus. Who do you want to keep on? Who do you want to kick off? Understanding who's an energy vampire, who's just going to suck the life out of you and just be fucking negative all the time. And then once you get the right people on the bus, man, that thing will move. Then where do you want to put those people? What seats do you want them to sit in, and why do you want them to sit in those seats? So that's one analogy that I love. Another one that I was talking to these guys about this morning was the crabs in the bucket analogy. So I don't know if this is actually true, but sounds good anyways. Is if you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, they can, if they work together, they can all end up getting out of the bucket. But what will happen is, one crab will attempt to get out, and the other crabs will assume that that's the wrong thing to do, so they reach up, grab him, pull him back down to their level. And man, that happens all the time in life. Is you're trying to do something different, you're trying to move and advance, and you got people that are just pulling you down. And it's really important to get the people who are going to try to drag you down out of your life. So you just got to think about it. Maybe you're doing something new, good, and revolutionary, or maybe your group of friends sees that you're going to hurt yourself and you're doing something bad, and they're trying to pull you out of harm's way. So kind of understanding where are you at on that continuum, and then what's your circle of friends doing, right? So the last piece that I was talking to these guys about this morning was the Roger Bannister story. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, Roger Bannister was the first guy to run a sub 4-minute mile. And prior, all the medical professionals at the time said that if you run a sub 4-minute mile, your heart will explode and you will die. Well, Roger Bannister runs like a 3:58 or 3:59 or whatever, and his heart doesn't explode and he doesn't die. So the next year, I can't remember the exact number, but it's somewhere between 30 and 50 people accomplished a sub 4-minute mile. So now the question is, well, what changed in that year? And it wasn't performance enhancing drugs, it wasn't a new supplementation, it wasn't revolutionary training, it wasn't all these things. It was just mindset, how you choose to approach something. And now that you see something is possible and how far the limits can be pushed, now you're more likely to push towards those limits because you've seen someone else do it. And if someone else has done it, now we know it's possible, now we know it's repeatable. So look at that a little bit. And there's a time and a place to intelligently push the limits of that bell curve and try some things that have never been done before. And the key word there is intelligently. Like, you're not just going to go reckless abandon and say, he said to push limits. Yeah, but do it in a way that's logical, that's sequential, that makes sense, that's following a specific system. We don't want stuff done at random. So anyway, just a couple thoughts to get your wheels turning a little bit. Hopefully you'll take pause for a moment and look at how are you choosing to frame things, who's in your life, and when was the last time you pushed some limits. So in the meantime, be sure to go to dynamichp.net and check out new content we have on our YouTube page. You can go to dynamichp.net and click that YouTube button, or you can go to dynamichp.net/YT. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good night.